Good evening. My name is Patricia Kranz. I'm the Executive Director of the Overseas Press Club, and we're so happy to be here. The Press Club was started 77 years ago by Americans who were covering World War II. And when they came home, they wanted a place to get together and talk about their experiences, exchange tips and sources, and have a few drinks. And over the years, the biggest event we have is a competition once a year, where now we give out 22 awards for international journalism, primarily meaning journalism for an American audience, the reporting that is done overseas. 3 to 4 of the awards are for photography. The others are for writing, broadcast, now digital. And we also have get-togethers and programs like this, or programs where we have reunions of people who've covered a particular region, like Russia or the Middle East. And we're more and more trying to do more programs that are of interest to people like you and young journalists who who don't have the support system that we had in the past, where more people have to be freelancers and sell their own work, find their own outlets. So tonight's program, it's 2 of our governors. They're on the board of governors, Pancho Bernasconi from Getty and Robert Nickelsberg, a freelance photographer, both with many years of experience and knowledge. So I hope that you can learn something.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. In the competitive world of photojournalism, awards mean quite a bit, not just getting published and earning a living, but at the end of every year, photographers, at least for the part that we're discussing tonight, submit their pictures, stories, and individual images to the awards committee in a series of panels. Juries, for instance, are convened to look at the stories, eliminate the ones that don't qualify or aren't up to high professional standards, and then ones are given awards. And then later in April, Patty may have mentioned, the awards are formally presented in New York. And they're quite prestigious, but what we wanted to do this evening is to show you the winning entries. Times has had quite a massive year in succession, actually, and they will probably again this year, as well as Getty Images and other wire services. So what we have tonight, at least with this John Paper Award, are, I believe, 12 images from 4 photographers. So the sequencing is very important. Your first image is very important. Your middle image is important, and your ending is obviously important. So the whole narrative structure comes through very clearly in combining 4 people's work, which is not simple to do, and have sort of a score as in music that works from the beginning to the end. So Pancho,
sure. Just real quick, thank Michael for having us here, and all you guys know what a great my camera is. Just this place is really special, and what you guys are doing here is really great. Before we show the work, too, I was looking at the name of this event tonight. It's called Tips for Aspiring Global Photojournalists, and that's at the bottom. One of the first things about being a global photojournalist is being a local photojournalist. Everybody you're going to see up here is Mauricio, Sergey, Tyler, Daniel. They didn't just get to where they are, going overseas and making these photographs, they started by doing things that they knew are around them, closer to them, in their neighborhood, in their building, in their apartment block, down the street. That's how all great photography starts. You do what you know, and you work out from there and kind of concentric circles of learning, failing, learning some more, continuing to grow. So when you look at these things, don't think that you can't do it. Just realize where you are today and that you want to get someplace else. And all these folks started that way. So just an important lesson to remember that. Nobody gets to be this good immediately. It takes time and practice and failing and learning again. So.
The major story for this award was obviously migration into Greece primarily, but also pictures were taken overland as people came out of Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Pakistan. These were all from 2015, mostly in September, October. So the photographers, and hold on this one, Pancho. I think that the fellow in the blue and that's his brother in the green. So there is some, automatically you would look to the caption, for instance, to see what's the reason for this photo, obviously, but it's more elaborative in that these people are related, and I think by luck, or maybe by design, I'm not sure if they were able to just then follow specific people as they made their trek. This is on a train. Many of you may have seen these in the paper. This was part of, it's not required that the images appear in a newspaper or a magazine publication. This was a tear gas attack. It tried to break up the demonstration in Serbia. The Hungarian police were not allowing the refugees to cross. Refugees from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Morocco, Algeria, and Somalia struggling for donations of water, blankets, diapers, and some clothes on their 10th day in camp near the border in Greece. They were not allowed to cross into Macedonia. So there's a lot of drama and context involved here. So obviously the caption is very important, but we don't have them glued. They're part of the file info in Photoshop. For the awards, the jury would have a sheet like this to consult.
One thing too, for you photographers out there still running, it's called layered, right? There's lots of different points of view here. I think what's really important is photographs doesn't have to be perfect composed, right? You got bits and pieces of people coming and going on the edges. And I think all that helps add to the sense of tension and stress that everybody's feeling, but it's also layered, right? So it's not just something right in front of you, it goes back and there's depth to it. That again comes with being aware of it and knowing how to photograph it and being comfortable that you're not going to get all the bits and pieces of people, but the parts you do, those hands coming out, the mouth, look at the mouth, the top, all help kind of set the mood and give you a sense of stress that are under.
So these are members of the same family that were on the train, Majid family from Iraq. Here they're registering at our reception camp. This is probably the most famous picture to come out of this series. It's an Afghan boy off of Greece, just landing on Lesbos. So it turns out the photographers and the media were harassed quite a bit by police. John, you know, in the back?
A lot of the volunteers that were helping people come across or land there on the shore, they took it upon themselves to keep the media away from the migrants, and so there was a lot of hostility there.
Ray, this is John Moore, finance photographer.
Thank you. I work for Pancho.
Have any of you seen this picture before?
What do you guys think of it? What do you feel when you see it?
Well, I kind of feel like I'm in the water, just the droplets are like suspended in the air, so it gives you like that effect that you're in the picture with them.
Pretty amazing, right? I think Tyler was in the water, and I think he might have lost the camera too, John, right? I think he dropped his camera in the water.
One of his cameras got trashed in the seawater. A big wave came in and hit.
Plus, there go your dry shoes.
There's something about that board space, right? It's just immediately connect with. I can't even imagine what's going on.
So they came out of Turkey with smugglers. So the whole concept of borders here, it's a little bit more interesting because it's a water border and a shore line as opposed to the Mexican border, for instance, or the Canadian border. Requires a different style of photography, but this certainly brought home sort of an invasion concept that how are the authorities going to deal with this? So some people didn't make it. This is the reaction having touched ground after the boat trip in Greece.
One of the things too with great photography, it doesn't have to be, as I say, a Michael Bay movie with things exploding and cars tumbling. It could be a real simple moment. That's you need to connect. That's what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to get your photography to connect with other people so you feel what you felt when you were there. I feel like that does it over and over again. Right? So you can't help but have that bothering.
This is part of the family that was followed, back the Majid family. And these are all the life vests that were probably sold to refugees in Turkey. So those are 12 images, and can we go back to the beginning and quickly go through them again? And you can see, look at the beginning image, arriving, moving, sleeping, moving, running, struggling, sleeping, registering, arriving, dead, arriving, and your last image. So sequencing is very important. I think you could probably, like a deck of cards, move some of these images around, but this is your perfect, thoughtful ending frame. Obviously requiring a caption.
So I have to say, I don't know what that means. Oh,
Okay. So Daniel Gurahulek photographed the earthquake in Nepal, which was not on everyone's radar, but pretty horrific. In the Himalayas. How many people here were aware of the Nepali earthquake? Okay, so a good portion. You can
anybody
see
here have people, friends, or family affected by it?
the buildings are not always built to standard, but I think the shake was pretty serious too. Yeah.
One of the things about being a photojournalist or photographer that goes from their home to a situation like this, an earthquake or a war, a tsunami. Of course, you're going there because you have a thoughtful eye and knowledge of the story, but also the amount of logistics that folks like John Camper have been through in their careers. So much of what you do is not just photographing, but just figuring out how to have power, how to have water, how to have electricity, how to get a good Wi-Fi or signal to send from places like that. So when you think about going overseas to do things like that, being a photographer is part of it, being kind of like MacGyver is the other part of it, figuring out how to do those things.
Also, your jet lag, and here you have altitude to deal with. It's not that simple to get acclimated.
And language.
And the authorities were not very quick in supplying relief. So the airport was closed for a long time.
One of the things you want to do in a situation like that is give a sense of scale. So folks who don't really realize, and it's not, if there was one thing that was Fifth Avenue, you had central scale, so to show it against the rest of the city gives you perspective that you otherwise wouldn't have. Perspective is super important when you're trying to tell a story from places that most people haven't been to. Did a great job.
So he managed to get out to the countryside, which was actually more cut off than people were aware of. Roads were just shattered. All these rather basic structures collapsed. It was all by helicopter. So as a photographer, you have to get a ride on a helicopter, otherwise you're not going to get out there.
There's a house.
One thing I found interesting is there's very little of the aid organizations that were not able to get in quickly enough for water and power, certainly. So what to do with bodies there? It's tradition in Hinduism to cremate. Want to go back to the
One thing too, as a photographer, Daniel, this is not his first, natural disaster. When he worked for Getty several years ago, there were floods in India and Pakistan, and he did an amazing job there as well. And one of the lessons is you take everything from your previous experiences and you use it in your next experience, and it's very true for situations like this. You take the good, the bad, and the things you wish you had done differently, and you remember them because you're going to get a chance to do it again. So take that thing that you learned and that you thought, gosh, I wish I'd done it this way. Remember those because you will have a chance to do it differently.
You can also see that the public were not really hostile to having the media there. This is an incredible work for a book. In fact, hold it out. Hold it up. Yeah. Here. There are a couple of copies of this, in fact, now. Yes, and part of the reason for us coming tonight is to donate 100 of these books were submitted to the award jury, and after about 13 years, I think, Patty, worth of books that come in with the contest entries, we've donated them to the library upstairs. So a lot of these are first editions, and all capable of winning a prize. There are only one prize per year for books. And this covers, I believe, 1993 to 2012. And John and I maybe a few others know the photographer, Stephen Hunt. He employed 3 or 4 different types of cameras: video, Polaroid, Widelux, Hasselblad, Rolly. He was like a coat hanger, really. He had more cameras around his neck. But if you have a chance, take a look at this book. It's really sort of free flow, but it is quite incredible. Black and white, color, contact sheets, and it covers almost 20 years of him working. So you see, you've got a lot of mystery here in the landscape, in the people, in the ethnicity, and the conflict that's still going on there. Ahmed Shah Massoud on the right, one of the well-known leaders. So this frame in particular caused quite a bit of controversy. Those are American soldiers in the Taliban-controlled area. That's a Taliban that was shot and killed and then burned. It still amazes me why they allowed or did that so openly, and it created a lot of problems for that unit.
Can you say what kind of problems? Can you expand on that?
Human rights, for instance, it documented whether this person had been alive or given a fair shake, whether he was a prisoner of war. Why don't you go back to that?
The Americans burned him. The Americans burned him. Which was good.
And it's one of the few times that, particularly with the embedding process, that the press was able to see something as controversial or as negative or as perhaps illegal against the Geneva Conventions as this. And I don't think Steve faced any retribution for this for working, or did he?
He was kicked out.
He was kicked
Yeah, the
out
military kicked him out of his embed. For sure.
that particular one?
For that, yeah, they ejected him for that. And it didn't go against the rules to photograph something that was right in front of him, and it wasn't an American casualty. It was he was unfairly kicked out. But the picture was so strong that it caused a huge embarrassment to the U.S. military.
Did he publish it, right?
They
Soon after?
soon thereafter, yes.
Okay. In a lot of cases, if he was on an assignment, it would be a judgment call whether you publish this right away while you're embedded or you wait till you leave, until you're out of the country, or at least out of the zone in order to continue to work. Either way, it's quite a revelation to see this. I've not seen any situation other than harassment and what John has photographed in Iraq, treatment of prisoners in Iraq. Not the brutalization, but and here this is a Hasselblad, sort of like a Widelux. Mike, what do they call the Hasselblad?
I think it's the X-Pan.
X-Pan.
That's the one that, yeah.
It's perfectly crisp. Gives you an idea, again, of the ambiguity, perhaps, and the mystery of a soldier decked to his neck and head, with only a little bit of skin showing, and the Afghans wearing flip-flops, wondering who the hell G.I. Joe is. Hold on this. You'll notice his arms are both artificial. So Steve used all kinds of formats in this: horizontal, vertical, square, rectangular. It's pretty much just his personalities. But this is really a sensational look. And it won the award. So the Robert Keppel Award is for bravery under enterprise under extremely challenging situations. Most often it's from a conflict zone, and then we have no shortage of those. In the news, it is considered the most prestigious photo award for a particular story and group of images, and we'll take a closer look. This is also rather indicative of what's going on in Syria today, as barrel bombs are used, hospitals and clinics are targeted, schools are blown up. And this all took place in Damascus. This is probably the most incredible picture that is still viewable. A lot of people find it difficult to look at flood, but this was in December 13th. Almost all the pictures are from December 2015. There's no morphine, there's no power, there's no plasma, there's no blood, no bandage. It's just chaos. And it's a Syrian photographer in a field hospital. And the hospitals have been shelled by Assad's forces. This is before, I think, the Russians entered.
One of the criteria for the CAPA is that the photographer had personal risk involved, that she was in as much danger as some of the subjects in the photograph, which makes it obviously one of the most prestigious awards, because it's a photographer that goes beyond what most would to make that photograph to personal risk.
Risk and enterprise. Enterprise meaning get the hell out of there.
How can you get the right word?
So from November 29th to December 13th. This is probably the calmest picture in the group. Really tough. Let's go back through that if we can.
Maybe check out the last set of
Yeah.
So the assigned government will also target wherever you're transmitting from. So you can pick up signals on anyone using the internet. It's not that simple to get your pictures out.
It's very dangerous.
Gives you an idea of how good you have it in most cases. So there you have to, as a photographer, you need to strike a balance of how much of the gore and emergency nature and the destruction, violence that you can show to an audience, and also what you yourself can tolerate.
And there's no shame in knowing exactly what it is, because everyone's different.
So that's a quick tour of the world between Greece, Nepal, Afghanistan, and Syria. It's not anywhere around the Bronx, but just gives you an idea that the world is round, and news organizations take time to put these stories together. And a lot of the stories that you see here were eventually put into books, which is, again, what is on the table there, and will eventually go upstairs to the center's library. So study whatever you can from these new books. They're quite interesting, and as students, but I think the Overseas Press Club will try to donate whenever we get a box.
Every year. The one thing I want to say to you students especially is one of the things that's so, even I think after 30 years of doing such when I was 18, is photography gives you the permission to be curious about your world. So focus on that, whether it's, difficult world or, calm world, but it's also the responsibility to tell that story correctly. So you have the permission to be curious, but when you get that ability to go into people's lives, which you continue to do this and document stuff, whether here or wherever you're going, you have that permission to go into people's lives, treat them kindly, and go, because you're not the only one going in, there might be somebody else that comes in after you. But it's super powerful when you can add, so it's a real privilege and an opportunity to kind of, you get to go where most people never get to go. That's a great challenge. Bob, John, all these guys might get to places that otherwise, if they weren't photographers, they maybe not have the chance to go and see things. So it's a pretty special thing.
Take some questions.
Yeah, totally.
Any of our Bronx students have questions for these guys or for John?
Well, I have a question for you guys. What made you take a photography class? The ones with taking classes. It's okay, there is no one right answer. There's definitely no student.
Yeah, why did you take this class? Yeah, those are good. You're never the shortest person.
The reason I took this class was because basically what you guys were mentioning how being curious but also being able to capture a moment that you may see it differently as someone else, and you want to show others how do you see that.
What about storytelling? It's something I wanted to, or both of us wanted to bring up tonight. And we have individual photos here that are sort of edited and sequenced into a story, not just a one-off picture. And to drive home a point of actually the result of your curiosity is a story. But is any amount of time spent on storytelling in courses, or does that come later?
No, they're working on their final project now, so.
An essay?
Yeah, so I've already 12 or 10 to 15 photos. And so we're discussing how they're gonna sequence them and like captions that give them context and such. Captions.
So you also have a Renaissance man here, being able to write very well as photograph extremely well too. So you're getting both.
You're right, so I'll use John as a warm-up. So John, why did you start the People's Art? What made you curious about it when you started?
Well, I started back when I was in high school, and I took a Photo 1 course because I thought it would be fun and easy. That was the reason I started. So I started with no journalistic sort of, I want to be a great storyteller, I want to do, I want to try and change the world with a picture. I really started because it was an elective that I thought would be cool to do, in my mind at the time as a 15-year-old, and I immediately found that it was both of those things. And as someone who goes like Bob, like Mike, goes to some of the difficult places where you've seen these pictures taken tonight, I would never call it always fun anymore, and it's certainly not easy. But it transformed over time from something that I thought would be cool to do to something that I still think is cool to do, but for a lot of other different reasons. Because you find something that you're kind of good at, and you get better at it, and you're surrounded by other photographers who are really good at it as well, and you learn from them, and you make terrible mistakes. Sometimes the pictures come out bad, and sometimes because you almost get hurt because you did something silly. And you learn from those things, and you see your colleagues and your friends do that too, and you get to learn from their mistakes, which is much better than learning from your own. And you still do it years later because you can not always change the world with a picture, but you can change the way people think. And that's kind of cool. And with social media platforms that we have now, you don't even necessarily, you can tell a story right here in your neighborhood, and you don't necessarily have to be on assignment from a major publication. You can do that story and you can put it out. And that story may not go viral around the country, but you will get a lot of eyeballs on it if you do a good job. And you can just put it up on Facebook, you can put it on Instagram, you can do this stuff yourself. And then you get noticed. And then you go to other employers, magazines or newspapers or agencies that want to hire you because they say, wow, this person has a good eye and you can tell a story. It's a long answer.
I think especially at the end, for everybody's important, the way you get noticed is so different today than it was when we were coming up. There isn't like the formal, there still is the show the portfolio to the editor, they look through it, they call you a couple weeks later. Now with Instagram, it's changed the dynamic and the process of how that conversation between the photographer, the editor, and the community that they're trying to reach are all jumping. Right? They're all the same and they're all different. It's a completely different process.
So there are a lot more platforms now in which to present your work, but this still remains one of the traditional platforms, the annual awards, and in particular for photojournalism. It's probably not going to change, but it has to be kept alive by each and every one of us, by students and the professionals. But as the New York Times is about to let go 200 more people this year, Bloomberg lets go people, Reuters, all of the major hiring companies, corporations in journalism are letting people loose. It's compressing, and it's become more and more difficult to find these outlets. So a lot of it is based on your own enterprise and technology that we didn't have. Living in India for 12 years, I was 18 months behind constantly. Hong Kong, whichever came out first for phones or transmitters or modems, India was 18 months late in getting those things constantly. So all of these technological impediments do slow you down, but it also makes you a better photographer, a better writer, and more enterprising. And that's incredibly important. I think you see that here in the course that you're taking, or any course for that matter, how you can cut corners, but professionally, you're faster with better technology. But still being able to tell a story is incredibly important, the narrative. And you can see even with 4 photographers, they were able to put the point across what it was like to land as a refugee. I just ran into a friend, a writer, Matt Akins, who, as an American, with an American passport, smuggled himself with an Afghan from Afghanistan to Greece without a passport. Spoke no English, took no notes as a reporter. He used his phone, just like everyone else was doing during this refugee crisis. And he has a book contract. But he had to take notes on his cell phone and act dumb. Couldn't tell anyone he was an American. He's half Thai, so he fits in very well, but no passport, no money. And he did it. It's going to take a book to find out how he did it. But, so that's called enterprise, courage. Tough to work with someone like that. He used Hawala and how you smuggle money through the system, through Dubai, and there's certain points that money was dropped off for him, and he got out. He was never put in jail. But a lot of this is not just having an extra pair of shoes, but having an extra set of tools to figure out how you're going to work each day.
And having the idea too. You gotta have an idea. Right? The execution is going to be varied by the number of people that think of it, but it's have the idea that's the first trick. Do you guys have any more questions? We're not that comprehensive.
Or any comments?
Just the guys have never lots of things to say. Ellen, anything you want to know about what you saw? Any pictures jump out at you?
Alan?
Barbara, I wish you'd tell these guys how, when you're a photographer, you work with a reporter.
So my whole career has been with a reporter. As a Time Magazine contract person, I had essentially to serve a word-driven publication. That's pre-internet. And most writers, you can almost officially say, have a more two-dimensional view on the situation and a news story, and the photographer has to add the illustration. But with that comes a collaboration. And as words became more easily transferable, so did imagery. And we could put a photo essay up on the web. It didn't require 10 extra pages in a magazine, which is how I learned how to do it. But the access for photography changes, and it never took space away from words. I think some writers always had a problem that if there's a photo on a page, the words disappear. That's not always the case. They give it more space, but Alan, I think you might have heard of that kind of potential run-in with pictures.
Absolutely, but as a reporter, I was always really helped by photographers who would actually conceptualize the story somewhat differently from the way I would.
Reporters are looking for paragraphs. They're opener, they're closing. Photographers are looking for opening pictures also. But ask a reporter what they're thinking at any given time, and they're thinking word groups, some different angle, some adjective, some adverb. And photographers are basically doing the same thing, but with different perspectives. So it's often, I found, better to take separate cars than have one car, so you don't end up slugging each other by the end of the day. But you know, why are you stopping here? There's a photograph. Who cares? That's usually the comment from a reporter.
Oh, I don't say that.
Well, that's quite. It's
been said.
The other thing I think you should talk about is
I don't want to
when I made
interview
this,
somebody that I can't take a picture of. So that whole conflict ends up, you get two cars.
fair enough.
Right.
2 cars is always better than 1.
So that's called a collaboration.
But when I made the switch to television, you see, then it becomes the issue of putting those 2 mindsets together.
Yes.
And that's why I think it's really helpful for you to tell them how pictures drive the whole story, whether it's the words or they embody the theme somehow of what's really important.
In the end, I believe that pictures gave the writer more space. If the
I
picture was
agree.
good, the page count went up.
And I think that is never been more true today. The world we live in is a visual world, right? Whatever we might think of the platform and what they're doing to the business, you know, you share and you see and you feel affected by the visuals around you. And I think the dynamic of words and pictures together will continue to evolve and change. And there is a dynamic of working together that's super valuable because you do feed off each other in terms of.
Yeah, the words can't just tell you what's in a picture.
Correct. There is a symbiotic relationship with words and pictures, and the story behind a photograph has a lot of value. I think what we're going to see in the coming years, you know, I'm afraid that, you know, people are losing jobs and places are shrinking. At the same time, it's never been more open. The ability to connect visually with other people around the world, whether they're professionals or whether they have a really awesome Instagram account in India and New Zealand. I'm from Chile. Like my family and friends in Chile and Argentina. I mean, the way you're connected with people and the way I think visually there's a lot more literacy today is because of all these platforms. And I think you guys are going to be the beneficiaries of whatever happens next. Somebody's got to ask a question. You can't do that.
We can run these through again if you'd like.
Tony, did any of the images jump out at you? My favorite part of this image was the hue on the left.
The shoot's pretty great.
Yeah.
It took me like 3 times to see that. Oh, sure. You gotta see it big too. That's one thing. We're so used to seeing stuff on our phone. To see a picture big really does kind of change your perspective. It's nice to be able to do that, right? Not just look at it on your iPhone or there's something about seeing a photograph, which is what's so wonderful about having books and having a library for you guys is the nature of being able to flip through things at your pace and go back and feel that and see something big like that. It's really kind of, it changes what you see. I bet you saw that on your phone, you probably never see the shoot.
How'd you go to another frame? The train, maybe. Try walking through that with your cameras.
Again, the layers, right? Just from beginning to end, just the way your eye never stops moving. Yep.
Well, these pictures basically remind me of why I started photography. Well, one of the reasons was because I wanted to capture a moment before it was gone. But another reason is because, like, because since people have different interpretations of things, like, I think that pictures really not tell the story, but show them the story so that they can have their own interpretation of what's going on, instead of really telling them the story, telling them to believe something, but showing them what's going on and letting them figure it out on their own.
That's a great thing. I mean, that's like one of the things that's so beautiful about photography is there's what I might think the picture about when I take it, and then it goes out into the world and everybody's gonna have a different interpretation of it. And that's, I mean, it's a really extraordinary thing when one picture is read and viewed and thought about differently by so many people. It's one of the magical things about it. I felt that's still very good.
Can you talk for a moment, Pancho, or Mom, about some of these moments? Some of these seem like decisive moments. Some of them are more powerful because of their moods or their compositions. I mean, there are different things that make these. This is very different than the previous one, but can you talk about that at all?
Well, this is a conglomeration of 4 people's work, so it's a little bit deceptive in a way. one person would not have been able to do all of this so perfectly. And it's been edited to its finest, so you couldn't even put a piece of paper between the pictures. It's so tightly edited.
Some photographs have kinetic energy, right? Energy in motion, and some have more potential energy, just energy that's sitting there waiting to happen. Like there's energy everywhere, right? The water, you said the water is dripping off, the pool looking off in the distance, the mouth open. And you have that, it's energy, but it's more just kind of contained. You don't know what's going to happen. You're kind of sure what's going on, but not really. So, every photograph has different kind of a force to it, energy to it, the way it fills the frame, right?
Sequencing is incredibly important in this particular essay because there was a lot of potential violence and shoving and moving and abuse by the police, but at the same time, the struggle of the people trying to flee a situation very often much worse than what they're facing now turns into something much worse than they probably left, other than the violence, say, of Syria.
It was very tough to show the scale of refugees and migrants. So a photograph like this did a really good job. No, it's very simple. It does a really good job of telling you the numbers of people, right? And it's very different than this. You don't have a lot of people, but you have that emotion in that. The father holding his son, and the guy holding his nose, the tear gas in the background. We all have different qualities, and there's no one thing that makes one picture better than the other. It's just we all have different intensity, different energy going through. You have a question?
I have a question about maybe the photographer's thought process when choosing to include certain photos. So for the last photographer, he included a photo of a syringe. It was on like a few rocks.
Yep.
And it jumped out at me because I was wondering why they decided to include that photo specifically, because in all the other photos, they really jump out at you. You could see emotion just screaming from the photo, but it's just a simple syringe, and that really made me wonder, well, the syringe just shows a lot of age and stuff, but I was wondering why they chose that instead of maybe a photo of another person or a child.
This one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it certainly slows your thought process down. You become curious for a different reason than just what the content. But it also shows, I think, what they were, hopefully, is the great need for medical facilities and how vulnerable they are. Hospitals, as soon as they became known, the locations are only known by numbers. In Syria, for instance, clinic, they don't even say number 12. They're listing on the phone, the intelligence, police people, they bomb it. So nothing is sacred there at this point. And the vulnerability of a room, in particular, the supply, the inventory of medical supplies, life is just dirt, broken, down on the floor, finished, empty.
But it's a question you saw because it is a detail and it's very different
From the human.
from the other versions, and it's a good thing that you picked up because it is a very different moment, right? It's about, can you believe that's a hospital floor? I mean, that's kind of crazy, right? That's where somebody's getting trained, it's getting help. So it is something the photographer made a conscious decision to both photograph and then include in the entry in the context of it, because it helps give you a more detailed, nuanced view of that room that he was in, right? So you have a sense of how crowded it is, you have a sense of how chaotic it is. Now you have a sense of both, just the state that it's in, what you find.
So I think what really impressed the photographer, and you do have to read the caption, this is outside a damaged newborn nursery, so for babies. So nothing is sacred there. Everything is a target. Missile strike. And all of this takes place in the same neighborhood of Damascus.
Yes.
Hey, I'm Edwin. I'm a student in the Bronx Photo League. I look at a lot of this work and I think about how it particularly applies to like my generation and my current time frame in terms of photojournalism and storytelling, and I think, you know, where, like, back then, there was more photographers traveling to Afghanistan to tell these stories and going to remote places. What do you think is the state of storytelling nowadays? Where do you think there's potential to tell new stories for the next generation of photojournalists?
I mean, one thing is chronologically, this is only a year and a half ago, too, right? So it's still pretty current.
A year.
A year ago.
Yeah, December.
Yeah. And I think the question is a good one. I mean, the state is that it's always in flux and it's always changing. It's not a cop-out answer, but I mean, I think it just depends on what story you want to tell, right? It's not so much what the world wants from you, it's like, what do you want to tell the world? What's the story that's most important to you and that causes you to, you know, to stay up at night and think about it and wake up with a thought about? That's the story that needs to be told next. And I can't tell you what that is. You know, when John and I have conversations about the stories he wants to do, whether it's in Africa or it's in the border, it's something that is, what is it that we want to say and how do we best say it? I think the beauty with a photo essay or a photo story is like there isn't one right thing. It doesn't, you know, you don't have to go overseas to tell an important story. It could be in your neighborhood, it could be in your country, it could be in your state. It doesn't, the traveling part is almost a decided point to telling the story, right? You don't have to go overseas. Absolutely, there are stories overseas that merit being told. But it's like, I'll throw that back to you, is what matters to you and why aren't you telling the story? Maybe you are. You need help figuring out how to best tell it. Or maybe you cut it up into chunks, right? It's what's going on for you that has value in terms of telling the wider audience what that story is.
Do you have an interest in traveling for photography?
No, because I feel like there's such a like proliferation now of, like, for example, photographers who are from the place that you're going to that can tell the story better because they're embedded, they're part of the community, they're part, you know, they understand it, they see it better. So it's just like, I don't know, this was like I mean, not this, because this is fairly recent, but also, it's also, you know, photojournalists who work for larger outlets,
Sure.
And who have a lot of experience in this work, you know, many of them get their mentorship or they learned at a time when a lot of people were kind of just traveling somewhere else to tell a story, you know. I don't know, why didn't they do it back then? Why is it? I'm not sure.
It's become much easier technically.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to shoot Kodachrome within a third of the shot, focus your camera correctly, get the film out, match the captions up, you know, from thousands of miles away was, you know, very, very complex. I mean, you could train, and I was there, and John, I think, helped train Iraqi photographers, and, you know, we could train local photographers to shoot digitally, put the camera on auto, and they could get good usable photos, and they were much better at getting into situations, as you yourself just said, you know. This is a Syrian photographer, right?
Yeah, and he couldn't come, they wouldn't let him come, so he accepted the award by video. But he was the one in Syria, he was a Syrian.
I mean, I think technology has made everything much more egalitarian, right? There's much more of those folks that you talk about, like this photographer. I think the Time Magazine photographer of the year was a Syrian photographer as well, right? Technology, you go back to the Arab Spring 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, you have guys in Egypt putting stuff up on YouTube and sharing it, so they were all local. I think those folks that you talk about that were kind of local folks, or, you know, that wasn't possible to do because there wasn't a platform to share it, and suddenly we learned a bunch of voices in these countries. One, that needed to say what they were going to say, because they were there, they were living it every day. Two, it was dangerous for Russian photographers to go in there because they were targeted. And three, they were just doing good work.
Locals are also targeted.
Yeah, locals are also targeted.
Definitely.
So they're doing good work. It's not just that they're locals, that they're locals, they're doing good work, right? And I think it's the combination of those things that makes a difference.
But Pancho, don't you also think it's important for foreign photographers to come look at America?
I was going to say, it's like when you have a point there, but it's also when a foreign photographer comes to your neighborhood, he sees things differently. And if you go somewhere else, it's like that fresh eyes thing. You get so used to seeing things one way, you don't see it anymore. So when you go someplace, you notice things that for others, it's part of their day-to-day and they go right by, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other, there's room for all.
The next 4 years, there's gonna be a lot of topics here to look around. Social issues.
There is no.
And I think that's a challenge, really, to tell it properly. In the Rust Belt areas, Western Pennsylvania, coal industry will never come back, even though it was promised by one of the candidates, now the president-elect. That's where you can find stories. And it's a bus trip, for instance. You can also do a story on the bus to that particular story.
Those are great stories.
So there are many different ways to enterprise this, but there's also less of a sustainable profession out there now to find a position in it. It's harder. Funds have to come from other places, not just from a publication.
Do you think that the quality of visual storytelling is as good today as it was back then?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
It's more closely scrutinized, perhaps. Fake news, that's one of the topics, a fake photograph is picked up pretty quickly.
It is no doubt harder to make a professional living than it was. We had an opening this year for a staff photographer, and we had over 500 applications.
Do you think we still hold the same credibility we had once?
I mean, I think that's a really difficult question to ask. I mean, credibility to who, to which audience?
There's more choice now.
Yeah.
If you want to be alt-right, you can be alt-right in photography.
I mean, I think that's the trick, is credible to who are you trying to be credible to? Who are you trying to tell that story to? Right? I mean,
But the media has to police itself. Definitely.
I think the good stories and the good visuals rise up. They still do. I think people do care. I think that part hasn't changed. I think the way people you got to separate the platform from the story, right? And I think that's sometimes gets kind of complicated today. And that's going to be a challenge for us.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I came in late, but where do you see video as a component in terms of the skill set for photojournalists? Are you getting pressure from publishers to incorporate that as a skill set? Do you use it? Do you look for it?
We don't get pressure at Getty, but there is pressure for video. I think the challenge is, and we've seen this for the last decade, as especially newspapers I tell a story of my friend who was the director of photography at Dallas Morning News. His publisher was running through the newsroom yelling video, and they got rid of all their staff photographers and went to videographers, and they realized that video is really hard. It takes more time, right? Making a still photograph is not easy, but once you have it, you can get it out, what you want, put a connection on it, move it pretty fast, right? Video is a different beast. I think the business model interfered with the professionalism of just good video for a while. And I think it's trying to recover. I think it's not, I feel like last week had a great treatment in the New York Times for his work in the Philippines on murders there. And I think, look at that, it's not video per se, but it's a moving narrative. If you look at what the Times did with the way they did it in terms of graphics and photos and Daniel's comments, I think it was in the podcast. It's not video by itself. It's like, how do you take and incorporate all these pieces into something that is storytelling? So it's not even just about video anymore. I think it's more about combining what it needs to be combined. Maybe the picture should just run by themselves. But if it has the ability to help tell a deeper, richer story, is how do you combine the pieces? So it's not strictly a video thing. And the truth too is, for video, it's tough, right? Still sell really well because they tell that story that the photographer wanted to tell, and then they tell multiple stories further down the line as other things come up that people want to illustrate. Video is tough because it's that one point of view, and that's kind of big.
And
It's not a criticism of it, but it's just different.
If you expect a still photographer to do both at a very high capability level, it's different sides of the brain. You have to put one down and pick up the other. To do them simultaneously, which is what an editor may think a person can do. The quality does suffer from one over the other, stills versus video. So you have these one-person bands now where somebody has to do radio or audio delivery, do some video on your iPhone, and you have a still camera. And that takes a lot of time, and you may spend too long in a particular situation. and stay tuned to do another form in the media, and a shell may land, whereas if you were just doing one, you're out the door, you're moving to another place, but it does put the burden on the individual and the organization on what they expect from one person for the same pay.
And we're lucky, for me, at Getty, we don't tell photographers, you have to shoot video at every event you go to. It's situational. Does this make sense here? John was on the border. He went from the Atlantic to the Pacific all the way to the Gulf. Shot almost all stills, but he did some Instagram stories. We were really awesome at it. But it wasn't all the time. It's a different audience. So the trick is, it's not just video for video's sake. It's like, what does it make sense to talk about your story? I understand that I'm in a little bit of a privileged position that I am not forced to do video all the time. So it's a harder conversation in other places. But it's that trick that it's not all or nothing, right? And I think that's the challenge is what medium best tells a story. And that conversation still needs to happen because that's an essential part of just good journalism, good editorial decision making. It's like, what's the best way to tell a story? And it just can't be knee-jerk still as a video. It's going to be a combination of them, or maybe one or the other. But yeah, if somebody's got good video experience, it always is. Because they think differently, right? Shooting video is different than shooting stills.
We've got to get these kids home soon. Okay. Is there one more question? Does somebody have another quick question? Yes, madam.
On the final, on the third photographer, his final photograph, you guys mentioned that he won an award for it. You weren't elaborating on it, yeah.
This is one of
He won an award for all of the material in a book, as a book.
Do you want to know like what makes this picture special?
Yeah.
Is that what you?
What do you think is interesting about it?
It's very abstract. I don't understand what it's.
I think that was his intention.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is that she's wearing?
It's a burqa. It's a full body cover that women just have a screen over their face to look through. And it's a traditional religious dress that some families insist that their women over the age of 13 or 14 wear. Not all have to wear it, but they're incredibly hot and rather dangerous in traffic, for instance. But you'll see it particularly in the Middle East. This is in Peshawar, Pakistan. It's an Afghan refugee camp. And the whole identity is taken away from a person. When you see that, there's no way you have a person where that could be a man trying to get away, but they look at the ankles. Photographers have X-ray vision, that's definitely a woman.
Yeah, that's impressive.
But if you do take a look at the book, there's a lot of mystery and unknown that the photographer wanted to call your attention to. And he's from Australia. And when you're put down in a place that you are definitely like being on Mars, an alien, great. You have a fresh eye and a fresh approach to something like this. Whereas in Afghan, they grow up with women wearing burqas. Don't expect for a woman to take it up and address you. They'll talk right through the cloth.
You definitely have some books upstairs that show other versions of women in burqas that give you a better sense of it.
But in a conservative Pashtun area, all the women would be wearing tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of women would be dressed like this. Once they leave the house, inside the house, they don't have to wear their own pants.
Good question.
Well, I'm sure you'll stay for a couple of more minutes. I just want to, you guys have to get home. We could stop here, and then whoever wants to stop and chat and talk for a few minutes, that would be great.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.